All right, good evening, everyone. I am Apostle Z, and this is the FLAVA Church, and I welcome you here to our Bible study. We have just read Proverbs chapter 4, and I'm now going to go into an in-depth study on these scriptures. Uh, Verses 1 and 2 in Proverbs chapter 4, and it says, "Hear, my children, the instruction of a father, and give attention to know understanding, for I give you good doctrine. Do not forsake my law." This is Solomon actually teaching his children, okay? And we'll see a little further when he goes into it. And he's teaching his children that it's very important to hear, to listen, meaning listen and accept, receive the instruction of their father. Now, of course, this is talking about a Christian father, a godly, upright father, okay? And hear the instruction of him and be sure to understand the instructions that you get. See, a lot of people may hear instructions. We know as adults, if we tell our children to do something, the children may not get the full gist of what we're telling them to do, and they end up doing it wrong. So these instructions are telling children to understand, give attention, right? To know, understanding. So hear the instruction and give attention to understand what the instructions are. There's a lot of times when we follow directions and instructions and don't get it right because we didn't fully understand it. And this isn't just talking about small children listening to their godly parents. Even the children, we're God's children in his church. And even we learn and study his Bible. However, if we don't fully understand it, we will still get it wrong, which is why we need to follow the instructions of a father. Just like Paul said, we have many teachers, but he comes as a pastor with a father's heart. And that's the same thing I identify with, a father's heart to give instruction to the children. But the children need to learn and understand what those instructions are, right? Now, verses 3 through 6. In 3 through 6, he says in verse 3, "When I was my father's son, tender, and the only one in the sight of my mother." Basically, and in the original King James Version, it says, "the only one loved by my mother." Basically, what this is talking about was he was reminding them that when he was a child, the way it says in verse 3, "When I was my father's son," he's still his father's son, but when he was a child, and the only one in the sight of his mother, meaning when he was loved by his mother, because no one else would love him as much as his mother. Basically, when he was just a child and he only needed to be cared for by his mother, fed by his mother, directed by his mother and his father, basically. However, he could not give his mother anything back for it. The mother went through 9 months of pregnancy. The mother kept and fed and cared for the children, changed the diapers, protected them from hurt, harm, and danger. And the child could do nothing back. Yet the mother still loved the child. And so this is basically saying, no one loves you like your mother, right? Basically, if we keep and obey the Father's commands, we also will live successfully. In verse 4, it says, "He also taught me." In verse 4, "He also taught me and said to me, let your heart retain my words, keep my commandments and live." So basically, if we keep and obey and follow and understand the instructions that we're getting from our fathers, we will live, meaning be successful and live a safe life while we are alive. Okay, this doesn't guarantee that we'll always live. We live in a world where we get sick, when there's germs, bacteria, we could die, accidents or whatever. However, while we are alive, we will find success. That's what live means, success, and be safe while we're yet alive. And so along with our mother loving us, even when we don't love them back, or when we can't even give them anything, but they love us anyway. This is what that's talking about, and we ought to be successful. Now watch this. Some of you may remember the story in the Bible when there were two women. One ended up killing her baby by accident because she laid on it and smothered it. And so she stole the other woman's baby. And when the woman awoke, she knew who her baby was. And she said, "This is my baby." And they started arguing about it. The other woman said, "No, your baby's the one that's dead." She said, "No, I know my baby." So they went to King Solomon to find out how he would decide on what to do so this woman could get her baby back. And he was wise. He said, "I'll tell you what, let's cut the baby in half. You take half and the other one takes half." Guess what? The true mother said, "No, leave my child, alive, okay? And don't kill my child." Where the other woman, it wasn't really her child, said, "Yeah, go ahead, kill the baby. Cut it in half," because she was just missing her own child. So a mother's love is deep. A mother's love is serious. A mother will go through the 9 months of pregnancy and being uncomfortable and even painful to bring her child into this world, and then she will love that child forever. And even when the child does wrong, the mother will still love their child. Now, let's look at verse 5. Verse 5 says, "Get wisdom, get understanding." That's a repeat of verse 1, right? "Do not forget nor turn away from the words of my mouth." He's saying, get understanding. Basically, what he's saying is get to know exactly what these instructions are, what they mean, how to follow them, understand them, okay? Now, in verse 6, wisdom, watch this, it's identified as a she. Look at verse 6. It says, "Do not forsake her, and she will preserve you. Love her, and she will keep you." In other words, if we're loving wisdom and understanding it, then and we hold on to it, we will be preserved and safe by it. So this is something else that they identify in the Bible, and pretty much everywhere in the Bible when they talk about wisdom, it identifies wisdom as she. Now, this is because when God separated man from the woman by putting Adam into a deep sleep and taking the estrogen genes that women are made of to create Eve, to be a woman, to be a helper for him, because God said it's not good for man to be alone. We can find that in Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. God left the testosterone gene, which is the male gene, in Adam so that he could be physically strong, a worker, because his job was to tend the garden. That's in Genesis chapter 2 and 15. Now, Eve would be the thinker of the bunch, to be able to help Adam. That's why when the devil came, he came to trick Eve instead of Adam. And the devil tricked Eve, if you notice, with the exact same thing that the devil got kicked out of heaven for. He wanted to be like the Most High God. And he told Eve in Genesis chapter 3, verse 4 and 5, he said, "You won't die if you eat that fruit that God told you not to eat, but instead you're going to be like the Most High God." The exact same thing. There was nothing else to tempt Eve with to sin. There was no sin in the world at that time. He couldn't say, "You can try these drugs or cheat on your husband or go around being loose with your body." No, he said, "You will be like the Most High God, and you'll know the difference between good and evil." Again, Genesis chapter 3, verse 4 and 5. He tempted Eve with the exact same thing that he got kicked out of heaven for, and a third of the population of angels got kicked out with him because they believed him and followed him. So basically, Eve is the one who has the wisdom. Now, man and woman both have wisdom. They're wise if they follow God and God's law. But it's Eve who's able to discern things better in her brain. See, a woman's brain can receive information on the creative side and or the serious side. Whereas men have what we call tunnel vision, because when we receive information, it comes on either the creative side or the serious side. And when we get on the serious side, it is locked down. That's it, serious. Where a woman will be able to pass information back and forth to determine, is this really that serious or not? And so she should be able, which comes from good communication, to express to her husband, hey, it's not that serious. Let me tell you why. Let me show you how. And see, a smart man will listen to his wife because God made us that way. All right. So it's like we're the brawn, she's the brain. Okay. But that's how they can help us, by helping us see things and think the way God wants us to see and think them. And that's why we got to be careful. It's going to go further to tell us to be careful of the wicked. Okay. Now, verses 7-9, it says, wisdom is the principal thing. Okay. Meaning it's from the beginning. That's how all things were made. From the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth through his wisdom. And we should get wisdom, being that it's the principal thing from the beginning, and the main thing, the first thing we should get is wisdom. We should be wise about something, get information about something before we do anything. We want to start a business. We want to build a family, whatever we want to do, whatever church we want to belong to, who will we accept to watch out for our souls before we take on any positions. We need to be knowledgeable about it. We need to know and have wisdom on what to do about it, or how to do it. We need to ask God's direction on how to do it. There's a lot of people that have not even completed all of their information about what it takes to be a pastor and the learning that they have take or should take, which the Bible teaches about. But yet they go out to step out and be a pastor anyway, knowing they still have studies to take. So I'm telling you, wisdom is the principal thing. That should come first before we do anything. Because if we don't have the wisdom and the knowledge on how to do things, we could fail at them. It also shares with us that once we're knowledgeable about something, here in these verses 7-9, then we'll be good at it and be promoted and honored. So whenever we really know what to do, how to do it, because we've studied, we've learned, we've received instructions, and we began to understand it, that's when we'll be good at it and be promoted and honored. Look at verse 9. She, again, wisdom, will place on your head an ornament of grace, a crown of glory. She will deliver to you. People will begin to say, wow, you're good at what you do. Whatever job you're doing. You can be a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, whatever it is you're doing. People will then say, you're really good at what you do, because of the wisdom that a person is using to operate and do the things they do. Now look at verse 10. Hear, my son, and receive my sayings, and the years of your life will be many. Now, when we receive, meaning when we abide by, follow, and obey the wisdom and knowledge of whatever it is we're abiding by or applying the wisdom to, the years of our life will be many, means our lives will be filled with success in many things. In fact, in everything we do, when we're doing what God is leading us to do, we will find success. It doesn't just mean we'll have real long lives. This is not talking about the years of our life, the age, but it's talking about the success in our life. So that's what will be many, meaning successful. Now, verses 11-13, again, talks about wisdom, which will lead us to be successful again in our lives. Verses 14-19. Because everything is telling us about the wisdom, and the wisdom is according to God's standards, don't get involved with wicked people. Don't get involved with the things they do or the way they do things. Now, Verse 19 says, and this is why we should not get involved with them. Look at verse 19. The way of the wicked is like darkness. You can't see your way. It says in verse 19, and this tickled me. It says they do not know what makes them stumble. Wicked people make so many mistakes and they fail and they're losers and they miss a lot of success. They miss their life calling. And when they make all these mistakes, they don't even know what's making them stumble. It's because they're not saved. They're not following God's law. They're following Satan's law when they're not Christian. That's what makes them wicked. It doesn't just mean they're super mean, but they still have a lot of mistakes because of their stumbling, because of being wicked, not being a part of God's family. And so when they stumble, we don't want to get involved with them because they can lead us to stumble. Don't get into business deals with them in our life because they can mess us up. They can give us wrong, bad advice. Satan knows who is following God and who's not. And he knows that these people who are doing wicked, who are not following God, which makes them wicked, he will lead them to give us the wrong advice or mess up and damage the things we're involved in if we join along with the wicked people. Don't marry someone who's not a Christian thinking, oh, well, they'll get saved. Don't date these people. Don't have these people as friends to help us find so-called entertainment. Don't get involved with them. Leave the wicked alone. They're trouble, all right? But in verse 18, it says the path of the just is just like the shining sun that gets brighter unto the perfect day. In other words, the things that the righteous people do of God, the just people, the things we do are helpful. The things we do are needed. It brings life. It brings joy. It brings happiness. It brings success. And it will continue doing that until we reach God and live with him in eternity. That's the perfect day. Every day with Jesus is sweeter than the day before. All right. So the path of the righteous, the path of the just is what's good. And it gets brighter and brighter day by day. See, when we accept God in our lives by accepting his son, Jesus Christ, we get better and better. So we're like a sun that gets brighter and brighter all the way until the day we make it to live in eternity with God. Verses 20 through 22. Solomon is now telling his children that if they continue to follow his wise instructions, those instructions will be, again, it's talking about life to them. And this word life is talking about success. It also says, though, it will be health to all their flesh. Now, the word all is small, but it should not be overlooked because every single word in this Bible is important. The fact that it will be health to all their flesh means not only will we live a safe and successful life, we won't be getting into problems, giving into temptations that many get themselves into, but it will save us from having poor health because we'll eat right, we'll exercise like we should, we won't get physically hurt, we won't be arguing or around danger, fighting with people, we won't be taking drugs, taking overdoses, being addicted to things, getting involved or end up having an unwanted pregnancy, we won't get killed, robbed, hurt, all of our flesh, every part of our flesh, from eating right to living right, to being involved with the right type of people, will keep us safe in every part of our flesh. We'll even groom ourselves properly, cleanse ourselves properly. So this isn't just talking about spiritualness. This is talking about physical health to our bodies that won't be hurt. And again, hurt not meaning maybe, an accident can happen, but we'll be paying attention and won't do things that bring harm to our lives, to our bodies, okay? All of our flesh, every part of it, from the brain and the way we think to our feet, where we go, the things we touch and do. We take our medicine the right way, right? Everything, all of our flesh, when we're wise, will be healthy. And this is a beautiful thing because these proverbs, which are wise sayings, teach us to live. We're still here in these bodies, and we're not supposed to have a horrible life in our body. If we're God's people, then we should have a good life no matter what we do, right? And so this wisdom will help us make the right decisions in everything that we do, okay? Now, verse 23, look at verse 23. It says, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it spring the issues of life. Our life issues, good or bad, comes out of our heart. It's who we really are on the inside, what we really think, what we really want, what we really desire, what we really don't like. So always allow the real person in the heart, that is when we're led by God, following wisdom, the inner person, who we are, always let that lead us to do what's right. Because whatever we do, whether good or bad, comes from the heart, comes from our inside, comes from the inner persons we are. That's how we respond and act, and the things we do, and the things we say. All of the issues in our life, good or bad, come from our heart. All right? So let's keep our hearts always, like verse 3 says, with diligence. Be aware and always go for doing what's right. Make sure that happens in our heart. Now, verse 24 through 27 actually begins to tell us the things we should do. Look at verse 24. It says, put away from you a deceitful mouth and put perverse lips far from you. Make sure we speak right. Proverbs 18:21 says the power of our life and our death is in our tongue. What we say, we will become. Make sure we say the right things about ourselves. Make sure we speak good about other people. Make sure we don't, the Bible says blessings and cursings ought not come out of the same mouth. Don't say foolish things like, I love the Lord and he made a way for me, and then turn around and complain about what is no good and what we hate and how we just can't seem to get by. Well, then if we keep speaking that, we won't. If we talk about how we're worried, we'll be worried. But the Bible says don't be worried about things, right? Instead, just seek God in everything. So we got to make sure we're saying and speaking the promises of God without double speaking the negative things in life. We can't always speak negatively and then talk about how great God is, because the power of life and death is in our tongue. And if we talk about negativity, then we'll receive negativity as well. Always make sure we speak the good things, the promises of God, and how God will save and help us. And then when we're facing something that's getting us down, make sure we're able to pray and speak right, and then it will help be lifted up. You know, the spirit of heaviness weighs on Christians. The spirit of heaviness was weighing on me heavy this week. But thank God for my wife. She was praying me through. And I knew to pray through. And I knew no matter how I felt to not speak devastation into my life and to speak the victory that I have in my life. And man, oh man, in a few days during this week, things started opening up and looking good and beautiful, because I started finding out information that was coming against that heaviness that was attacking me. I started finding out information that I didn't know before. Doors started to open up. God started shining that light through with the wisdom, because I knew not to fall under that spirit of heaviness, but keep looking forward to God making that table in the path of the enemy for me. It says he makes a table for us in the presence of our enemies. So I saw this table being made, and I kept saying, you know, like you're waiting for good food to eat. And I was like, is it ready yet? Is it done yet? Can I eat it now? The goodness of God, the promises of God. But I kept my mouth from speaking negatively and devastating things. Verses 25 through 27 leads us to always look straight ahead. Look at verse 25. Let your eyes look straight ahead and your eyelids look right before you, right? Basically, look to find out what the right thing to do is. Always doing it according to God's standards. That's what look straight ahead means. Don't look to the left nor to the right. Don't go to the wayside. Don't look that if God's not doing something when we think he should do it, we try to fix something ourselves. Or if God doesn't move the way we want him to move and the time we want him to move, we start looking to other ways. Don't do that. Just continue to look straight ahead on the path of righteousness for God, right? That narrow, straight and narrow path of righteousness, right? For his name's sake. Psalms chapter 23, verse 3 says to stay on the straight of and narrow path of righteousness for his name's sake, right? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. There you go, right? In fact, Proverbs chapter 12, and we'll be getting there because we study chapter by chapter, chapter 12 and verse 28 says, there is no death on the path of righteousness. Okay, so here, verse 27, do not turn to the left or do not turn to the right or the left. Remove your foot from evil. Just come away from the things that are not right, what is not right according to God, and we'll be okay. Don't allow our flesh, our mind, our mouth, our footsteps, our hands to touch, do, say, and go places and do things we should not do. We have to lock down what does God say about it. And that way we'll find success. And even when it seems hard, look to God, not to the complaint. Look to God, not to the enemy. Look to God, the path of righteousness, and leave the mess that people try to say we should do out of it. Whenever someone suggests something we should do, make sure it matches up with something God would want us to do. All right? Other than that, don't want to hear it. And if someone says this is what God would want us to do, compare it to what it says in the Bible. If they can't compare it to the Bible, don't waste my time with it. All right? So that's righteousness, that's wisdom, and wisdom, is blessed to our lives. All right, gentlemen, anyone watching this or hearing this and following along with this, realize that we need to honor and respect these women the way God does. All right, because they are blessings to us. All right, so listen, if this has been a blessing for anyone there, remember, you can go back and revisit this, right, on our YouTube page, FLAVA Church on YouTube, or come and visit us right here at flavaministry.com. If anyone wants to sit in live in our Bible studies, or if you want to sit in live in our church services, wherever you live in the world, it's international. Just log on to that website and all those instructions will be there. Follow instructions and understand them, right? So if you don't have a church home that you feel like you're being truly fed in, again, log into FLAVA Church and you'll be able to become a part of us live in all of our services, all right? Also, if you've been blessed, please sow a seed into this ministry. Bless us, into this church. We're not just a ministry, we're an actual church. So please, I look forward to seeing you again on next week for more Bible study. God bless you, and accept Jesus Christ in your life. Follow along, and in all you're getting, get understanding with some true Bible study. God bless you, and amen.